My name is Robert King. I'm 45 years old, and until 10 months ago I thought I had it all figured out. I worked as a construction project manager in Orlando, Florida, pulling in a steady $85,000 a year. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep my wife Victoria and me comfortable in our modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street in College Park. Victoria and I had been married for 8 years. She was beautiful, ambitious, and came from money. The kind of old Florida money that builds gated communities and country clubs. Her family, the Wilsons, never thought I was good enough for their precious daughter. They made that crystal clear when they insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement before our wedding in December 2016. It's just to protect the family assets, Victoria's father, Charles Wilson, had explained in his lawyer's office downtown. Nothing personal, Robert, just business. I signed it without much thought. Love makes you do stupid things, and I was head over heels for Victoria. The prenup seemed straightforward. What was theirs stayed theirs. What was mine stayed mine. And anything we acquired together during marriage would be considered marital property. Simple enough. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. For 8 years our marriage was solid. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Victoria worked part-time at an art gallery downtown. More for passion than necessity, earning about $26,000 a year. We talked about kids, maybe buying a bigger house someday. Normal married couple stuff. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October 2024, everything changed. Victoria had been playing the same lottery numbers for years. A combination of family birthdays and anniversaries. Someday, she'd always joke, these numbers are going to make us millionaires. That Tuesday they did. $12 million. After federal taxes, Florida doesn't tax lottery winnings. It came to about $8.1 million. I remember staring at the winning ticket in our kitchen that evening, barely believing it was real. Victoria was screaming, jumping up and down, calling her parents on her cell phone. "We're rich, Robert," she shouted, throwing her arms around me. "We're actually rich." For about 10 minutes I thought our dreams had come true. That same night, Victoria's entire family showed up at our house. Her parents, her brother David, even her snobby Aunt Margaret, who usually pretended I didn't exist. They were celebrating, popping champagne, making plans. But something felt off. The way they looked at me had changed. It was subtle at first. Sideways glances, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Victoria seemed different too. Distant, cold. Over the next few days, it got worse. Victoria started having long, private phone calls with her family. She'd leave the room when I approached, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about our plans for the money, she became evasive. "We need to be smart about this, Robert," she'd say. "My father knows people. Financial advisors, we need to protect our windfall." 3 weeks after winning on November 2nd, Victoria sat me down in our living room. Her parents were there too. which should have been my first red flag. "Robert," Victoria began, her voice unnaturally formal. "We need to talk about our situation." Charles Wilson cleared his throat. "Son, this lottery win changes things. Victoria's windfall needs proper protection." "Our windfall," I corrected. "We're married. What's hers is mine. What's mine is hers." The room went silent. Victoria's mother, Patricia, exchanged a look with her husband. David smirked from his spot by the window. "Actually, Robert," Charles continued, "that's not exactly how this works. You see, lottery winnings are considered personal property in many cases, especially when—" "When what?" I asked. Victoria finally spoke up. "Robert, I think we should separate for a while. This money, it's mine. I won it. I picked the numbers. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What are you saying, Victoria?" "I'm saying I want a divorce," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "And I want you to move out. Today." Charles Wilson leaned forward. "The prenup you signed protects both parties, Robert. Victoria's lottery win is her separate property. You're not entitled to any of it." I sat there stunned. 8 years of marriage, and they were throwing me away like garbage the moment real money entered the picture. "I see," I said quietly. "So, this was all planned?" "Nothing was planned," Victoria snapped. "But now that we have this opportunity, I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me." Take advantage. That's what she called our marriage. "Fine," I said, standing up. "I'll pack my things." Victoria looked relieved. Her family seemed pleased with how easily I was capitulating. They had no idea what they'd just done. I moved into an extended stay America on International Drive that night, paying $115 per night. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I did something they probably didn't expect. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I called James Hayes, one of the best divorce attorneys in Central Florida. I'd heard about him from guys at work who'd gone through messy splits. His consultation fee was $600, but it was money well spent. "Mr. King," Hayes said during our meeting the next morning in his office on Orange Avenue, "tell me about this prenuptial agreement." I handed him the copy I'd kept in my home filing cabinet. Hayes read through it carefully, his expression growing more interested with each page. "This is fascinating," he said finally. "Your in-law's attorney was quite thorough. Almost too thorough." "What do you mean?" Hayes pointed to a specific clause on page 3. "Right here, Section 4.2 states that any assets, prizes, or winnings acquired during the marriage shall be considered marital property, subject to equitable distribution upon divorce." "But they said lottery winnings are personal property. In Florida, lottery tickets purchased with marital funds during marriage are indeed marital property. And even if Victoria used her own money, this prenup specifically overrides that protection." Hayes smiled. "Mr. King, your in-laws just handed you the keys to the kingdom." I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. So, I'm entitled to half? According to this document they made you sign. Potentially, yes, but we'll need to be strategic. They're going to fight this hard, and they have resources. My retainer is $18,000. I used my credit card and borrowed against my 401k to pay it. Best investment I ever made. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria and her family made their intentions clear. They hired the most expensive divorce lawyer in Orlando, a shark named Bradley Morrison who specialized in protecting wealthy clients' assets. His hourly rate was $950. Morrison sent me threatening letters, demanding I vacate any claim to the lottery winnings. He argued that since Victoria picked the numbers and bought the ticket, it was her separate property, regardless of the prenup. They underestimated me completely. They saw a working-class guy who'd roll over and accept whatever scraps they threw him. They were wrong. Hayes and I worked methodically through November and December. We documented everything. When the ticket was purchased, what account the money came from. Even the fact that Victoria had been using our joint Wells Fargo checking account to buy lottery tickets for years. But the real breakthrough came when Hayes discovered something beautiful in Florida state law. "Robert," he said during one of our strategy sessions in late December, "Florida Statute 61.075 is very clear about lottery winnings acquired during marriage. Unless there's a specific agreement stating otherwise, they're marital assets. But didn't the prenup exclude them?" Hayes grinned. "That's the beautiful irony. The prenup your in-laws forced you to sign actually strengthens your claim. They specifically included language about any prizes or winnings being marital property. They were so worried about protecting their existing wealth, they accidentally gave away rights to future windfalls." Meanwhile, Victoria was living it up. She bought a new BMW X5 for $87,000 in November, designer clothes, and put a deposit on a waterfront condo in Winter Park for $750,000. Her social media was full of photos from expensive restaurants like the Ravenous Pig and luxury shopping trips to mall at Millennia. She was spending our money like it was going out of style, and social media was documenting everything. The divorce proceedings began in earnest in January 2025. Morrison, Victoria's attorney, came out swinging. He filed motions to dismiss my claims, arguing that I was a gold digger trying to exploit a legal loophole. During our first court appearance at the Orange County Courthouse on January 15th, Morrison was cocky. He strutted around in his $2,000 Armani suit, making snide comments about opportunistic spouses to anyone who'd listen. "Your Honor," Morrison argued, "Mr. King is attempting to claim half of winnings that his estranged wife earned through her own luck and intuition. The lottery ticket was purchased with Mrs. King's personal funds, using numbers she selected based on her family's significant dates. This is clearly separate property." Judge Patricia Henderson listened patiently. She was known for being thorough and fair, with 18 years on the bench in family court. Hayes stood up for our response. Your Honor, Florida law is clear on this matter. But more importantly, the prenuptial agreement that Mr. Morrison's clients insisted upon specifically states that any prizes or winnings acquired during marriage are marital property. Morrison scoffed. That clause was intended to cover things like small casino winnings or raffle prizes, not a $12 million lottery jackpot. The document says any prizes or winnings, Your Honor. Hayes replied calmly. It doesn't specify an amount limit. Judge Henderson requested copies of all documents. The hearing was adjourned for 2 weeks to allow her time to review everything. Victoria was furious. I heard through mutual friends that she'd been screaming at her parents, blaming them for the prenup language. The Wilson family was starting to panic. They tried to settle out of court in early February. Charles Wilson called me directly on my cell phone, something he'd never done in 8 years of marriage. Robert, let's be reasonable here, he said. We'll offer you $1.2 million to walk away clean. That's more money than you've ever seen. I'll think about it, I replied, though I'd already made up my mind. 2 days later, Victoria herself showed up at my extended stay motel room. She looked different, tired, stressed. The constant partying was taking its toll. Robert, please, she begged. We can work this out. I was scared, okay? The money, it overwhelmed me. My family got in my head. Scared of what, Victoria? Sharing our good fortune? I'll give you $3.2 million, she said desperately. $3.2 million, Robert. We can both start fresh. I looked at my wife of 8 years, this woman I'd once loved completely, and felt nothing but pity. It was never about the money, Victoria. It was about respect. She left crying. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The discovery phase in February and March revealed just how badly they'd miscalculated. Hayes subpoenaed all of Victoria's financial records, showing she'd been using our joint account to buy lottery tickets for years. We had documentation going back to 2019 proving it was a pattern of marital spending. More damaging was what Morrison had advised Victoria to do with the money. Instead of keeping it separate, she'd been spending it freely, mixing it with other marital funds. In legal terms, she'd commingled the asset, which further strengthened our claim. But the real nail in the coffin came when Hayes discovered Morrison had made a critical error. In his haste to file preliminary motions in November, he'd actually acknowledged in court documents that the lottery ticket was purchased during the marriage with marital funds. He just destroyed his own case, Hayes told me, barely containing his glee. Morrison's so used to bullying people into settlements, he got sloppy. The final hearing was scheduled for April 18, 2025. As the date approached, the Wilson family's desperation became obvious. They hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. They found nothing. I'd lived a clean life. They tried to claim I'd been emotionally abusive, hoping to reduce my settlement. Victoria gave a deposition claiming I'd been controlling and manipulative. The problem was, They had no evidence, no police reports, no medical records, no witnesses. It was pure fabrication. Hayes demolished their claims with phone records showing Victoria had been the one making all the major financial decisions during our marriage. Bank statements proved I'd never controlled her access to money. Her own social media posts showed her living freely and happily throughout our marriage. 3 days before the hearing, Morrison made one final settlement offer, $4.5 million. "It's a good offer, Robert," Hayes advised. "Taking this to trial is always a risk, even with our strong case." I shook my head. "This isn't about maximizing money, James. It's about justice." The night before court, I couldn't sleep in my motel room. I kept thinking about how this all started, with a prenup designed to keep me from their precious family money. The irony was beautiful. Their own greed and paranoia had become the weapon that would defeat them. Victoria's family had spent their whole lives looking down on people like me. Working-class folks who earned their money through sweat and honest labor. They thought money made them better, smarter, more deserving. The next day they'd learn otherwise. April 18th arrived gray and humid. Typical Florida spring weather. I wore my best suit, a navy blue Joseph A. Bank, one I'd bought for our wedding 8 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Orange County courthouse was packed. Word had gotten out about the case, and local news crews from WESH2 and Fox 35 were stationed outside. Construction worker fights for lottery millions had become a human interest story. Victoria sat with her family on one side of the courtroom, looking pale and nervous. Morrison whispered urgently in her ear, probably preparing her for what was coming. Judge Henderson took her seat at exactly 9 a.m. "We're here for the matter of King versus King. Case number 2025 DR 002847O. Mr. Morrison, you may present your opening argument." Morrison stood confidently, but I noticed his hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, this case is about a vindictive husband attempting to steal money he had no part in earning. Mrs. King selected those lottery numbers, purchased that ticket, and won that prize through her own actions." Hayes remained seated, taking notes on his yellow legal pad. He looked completely relaxed. Morrison continued for 20 minutes, arguing that lottery winnings were personal property, that the prenup didn't apply to unforeseeable windfalls, and that I was essentially a gold digger. When he finished, Judge Henderson turned to Hayes. "Mr. Hayes, your opening statement." Hayes stood slowly. "Your Honor, this case is remarkably simple. We have a prenuptial agreement signed by both parties in December 2016 that explicitly states any prizes or winnings acquired during marriage are marital property. We have Florida state law that supports this position, and we have documentation proving the lottery ticket was purchased with marital funds during the marriage." He paused, looking directly at Morrison. "The defendants are asking this court to ignore their own contract because they don't like the outcome. The evidence phase was devastating for Victoria's side. Hayes presented bank records showing years of lottery ticket purchases from our joint Wells Fargo account. He showed how Victoria had commingled the lottery winnings with other marital assets. He even had the receipt from the Wawa gas station on Colonial Drive, where she'd bought the winning ticket on October 8, 2024. Paid for with our joint debit card at 3:47 p.m. Morrison's cross-examination was weak. He tried to argue that Victoria had intended to keep the winnings separate, but intention doesn't matter when you've already mixed the money. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Hayes called Morrison's legal strategy into question by reading directly from his own court filings. Mr. Morrison, in your preliminary motion dated November 18, 2024, you stated, and I quote, "The lottery ticket in question was purchased during the marriage with funds from the marital estate." Do you remember writing that? Morrison's face went white. That was a misstatement. A misstatement that you signed and filed with this court under penalty of perjury? Yes. Judge Henderson leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, are you telling this court you filed false documents? No, Your Honor, I misspoke in the document. I meant to say... Hayes interrupted. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison's own filings support our position. He's acknowledged that marital funds were used to purchase the winning ticket. The Wilson family looked sick. Charles was sweating through his expensive Brooks Brothers shirt. Patricia kept shaking her head in disbelief. Victoria took the stand to testify on her own behalf. Morrison had coached her, but she was clearly rattled. Mrs. King, Hayes began his cross-examination. You've testified that you always intended to keep any lottery winnings as separate property. Is that correct? Yes. Then why did you deposit the entire $7.2 million into your personal checking account at Bank of America, which you've been using to pay marital expenses? Victoria stammered. I needed somewhere to put it. You have a separate account at SunTrust Bank, correct? An account your husband has never accessed? Yes, but an account with over $63,000 in it, correct? Yes. So you had somewhere to keep the money separate, but you chose not to. Instead, you mixed it with marital funds and began spending it freely, correct? Victoria looked at Morrison desperately, but he couldn't help her. I guess so. Hayes pulled out her BMW purchase agreement from Brickell BMW. You bought this car on November 15, 2024, 5 days after depositing the lottery winnings, correct? Yes. For $87,000? Yes. Using lottery money? Yes. Did you consult with your husband about this major purchase? We were separated. Ma'am, you didn't file for divorce until November 20th, 2024. You were still legally married when you bought this car. So I'll ask again. Did you discuss this purchase with your husband? No. Judge Henderson recessed for lunch at 12:30 p.m. In the hallway, Charles Wilson approached me one final time. Robert, this is madness. We'll appeal whatever decision she makes. This could drag on for years. That's your choice, Charles. But I've got time and a good lawyer. The afternoon session was brief. Judge Henderson had made her decision. I've reviewed all evidence and applicable law, she began at 2:15 p.m. The prenuptial agreement signed in December 2016 is clear and unambiguous. Section 4.2 explicitly states that any prizes or winnings acquired during marriage are marital property. Florida Statute 61.075 supports this interpretation. Furthermore, the defendant's actions in commingling the lottery winnings with marital assets demonstrates her own recognition that these funds were not separate property. Victoria started crying. Her mother grabbed her hand. Therefore, I'm awarding Mr. King 50% of the net lottery winnings, totaling $4.05 million. Mrs. King, you have 60 days to liquidate assets if necessary to meet this obligation. The gavel came down with a satisfying thud at 2:22 p.m. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all except one from Channel 9. Mr. King, how does it feel to win? I thought about that for a moment. Justice always feels good. 2 months later, in June 2025, I used part of my settlement to buy a small construction company from a retiring contractor. Today, King Construction employs 38 people and specializes in affordable housing throughout Central Florida. Victoria had to sell her BMW, return the deposit on her Winter Park condo, and liquidate most of her designer purchases to pay me. Last I heard, she was working at her father's real estate office in Winter Garden, earning $42,000 a year. The Wilson family never spoke to me again, which was fine by me. They'd shown their true colors when they thought they could throw me away like garbage. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just letting people face the consequences of their own greed and stupidity. They created the weapon that destroyed them. I just had the dignity to use it. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.